Now for a review of what's making the headlines in the papers this morning, let's bring in a RISE analyst, Dr. Constance Ikwoku. Good morning, Dr. Constance.
Good morning, Yolanda.
Looking very bright on this gloomy morning.
Thank you. And you are in black, the complete opposite.
Absolutely.
Well, you look good all the same.
Thank you.
Wonderful to see you this morning. And Charles, welcome back. Good morning.
Yes.
Good morning. Thank you so very much. I guess I'm caught in between the two of you.
Yeah. How did you manage? We heard you had a little,
Well, so far so good. Not yet 100%, but at least manageable enough to return to work.
Okay. Good to see you too.
Thank you.
All right, to look at the papers with us today, we have Doyum Nazinga. He is the Abuja Bureau Chief Head, Northern Operations of the Daily Times. Hello there and welcome to the program. We begin with this day. Man to FG, rebased nominal GDP expansion of 18.3%, not evidence of economic progress. Insists GDP growth without industrial growth, hollow statistics. In response, NECA says rebased data brings transparency and aligns with international standards. While the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria is describing the published GDP growth as, almost phantom, the president of the Dangote Group, Aliko Dangote, in the next article here praises President Bola Tinubu as a listening commander-in-chief, adding that his policies are reviving the private sector. From different standpoints, both Dangote and MAN have raised prevailing sentiments. While Dangote speaks to the Naira for crude policy and the unification of the exchange rate windows, which ushered in a measure of stability, MAN, a group that deals with the real economy on a day-to-day basis, on the other hand, points to the deep-rooted challenges that are obscured by this recent rebasing. Although the economy has become larger according to the rebasing statistics, MAN argues that it has neither become more productive nor industrialized. And finally, on this day front page, there's an article at the bottom that you almost miss, which is political. Jerry Garner, we've been hearing his name for many years, has been in the political circles. According to him, there are plans to woo Peter Obi back to the PDP ahead of 2027 general poll. While this will not startle any keen political observer, now that Alhaji Atiku Abubakar has left the party, he has room to explore this sort of idea. Doyum, a lot of stories here for you to analyze. Please take it away.
All right, thank you very much. Now, to begin with, the rebasing of the GDP, the nominal expansion of the GDP, has become very curious to me and then to a lot of Nigerians. The position of the manufacturers of Nigeria, MAN, tends to resonate more with Nigerian and ordinary Nigerian who lives and does business in Nigeria on a day-to-day basis. There seems to be a contrast between what MAN and the position of the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria and the position of the chairman of the Dangote Group, Alhaji Aliko Dangote. Of course, perhaps it favors him as a big player in the private sector in Nigeria, enjoying a robust government patronage, and as such, his statement or his sentiments we can understand and relate. But again, the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, which is a bigger group that, it's the composition of different players within the private sector, especially in the manufacturing space. So this also shows that there has been a serious disconnect between government policy and the reality on ground. But I heard there's an argument that the rebasing is in alignment or in compliance with international best practice. Do we really need to necessarily do things just because it aligns with international best practices, or government policies ought to be in such a way as to directly impact positively on the lives of the citizenry? I think this is the argument between the chairman of the Dangote Group, and the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria. I believe that Nigerians still go through a lot on a daily basis. The areas that man has cited, critical infrastructure, unemployment, the inflation is still on a high. So we wonder, and then it looks to be as if the whole debate of the GDP, nominal GDP expansion is a mere recalibration of the statistics. So we wonder, let's see how it goes. Government, we understand, is still working very hard to ensure that it preserves all that it had promised to do for the citizenry, whether they've got it or they haven't got it. We still wait to see how they will still keep pushing. Now, there's a lot that the headlines have talked about, including on the political front, the position of the PDP, which has suddenly realized that they will need to still put their house together. It's good, it's instructive, because it appears the coming up of the ADC, that's the African Democratic Congress, and the moves and the alignment of the opposition political parties has made almost every political party to sit up. And the PDP is one that has actually sat up. And if they are considering bringing a Peter Obi, I understand that they have finally zoned the presidency in 2027 to the south, and Atiku Abubakar is out of the PDP. It appears to me that Atiku Abubakar was the problem of the PDP. Was this so? But let's see how it goes. Let's see how the talks and the efforts of the likes of Jerry Ghana, who are working towards trying to woo a Peter Obi back to the PDP. And let's also see if Peter Obi will also accept. Peter Obi has accepted to go into alignments with other opposition political parties and to see how they can wrestle power from the ruling of Progressive Congress by 2027. So let's see how the outcomes of all these negotiations and then efforts to woo him back to the PDP, or also what the results they will yield. So we're waiting to see.
Since you mentioned the ADC, the next story is on the ADC actually, and they've been talking a lot. The Daily Times, which is the paper that you read in the Northern Operations, ADC demands 10-year audit of 200 trillion naira external loan. The African Democratic Congress, the bride of the coalition, in a statement by its National Publicity Secretary, Bolaji Abdullahi, accused President Bola Tinubu of surpassing his successor in, quote, mortgaging the country's future in mountains of debt in the name of economic reform. The party described as fiscal vandalism what's going on, said it's concerned that our debt has tripled and that it's reckless and we need a full disclosure. Well, the ADC has been speaking of a lot of things lately as the opposition now, for a couple of reasons. It is, the bride of the coalition, like I said earlier. It needs to become relevant and stay relevant ahead of 2027. But to the substance of what the story is talking about, full disclosure audit might be necessary, although not much has come out of the ones we've had in the past. But when we talk about 10 years now, it means it also covers the administration of former President Muhammadu Buhari, who is also part of the APC administration. And the person that issued this statement, actually, Bolaji Abdullahi, served under Muhammadu Buhari. So this is our APC that needs to give account. Charles, I see you nodding, please. Go ahead and let us have your take.
I wonder whether Bolaji Abdullahi is referring to his namesake Bola Tinubu, or he is referring to the All Progressives Congress, because there should be a distinction between the two as far as the issue of accumulation of foreign debt is concerned. Well, he was right by saying that it is it's happening in the past 10 years of the APC administration, but he's now, holding President Tinubu vicariously responsible for what his predecessor did. So is his point that Tinubu is unable to stop the trend of what was initiated under the Buhari administration under which he served, or is it that, you know, it has gotten worse under the administration of President Bola Tinubu? So, one, he has to be very clear on this, because, I mean, it's just a case of, you know, when you point a finger, the other four fingers are pointing back at you. And I guess it's a trend, because most of what the, you know, the leaders of the ADC are accusing the All Progressives Congress of, it's either one, they were part of creating that problem that they're blaming the APC for, because many of them were part of the APC, or on the other hand, what they are accusing the Tinubu administration of is a trend that actually has been in place, whether it's the People's Democratic Party or the succeeding APC. I can actually see Nasir El-Rufai there, who once said famously that it is the job of the opposition to accuse the ruling party whether they do well or not.
All right. Thanks, Charles, for that extensive discussion on that topic. Let's move on to Vanguard newspaper. A miracle of Rabat, how we overcame Morocco by Super Falcons. We also have that story in Daily Independent. Slightly different. Tinubu to host Super Falcons today after WAFCON victory. If you head to page 10 of Vanguard, it has that wonderful photo of a jubilant Super Falcons team after that win in Morocco. It also shares how the team pulled itself together in the heat of the moment to overcome the Moroccan team, and it is expected that the players will be rewarded handsomely. They better be rewarded. You know, Super Falcons hardly get treated as nicely as the Super Eagles. You know, and you know, someone said over the weekend that if they do not receive, or if the president does not receive them, you know, that would be a faux pas. So now we know that they're going to have audience with the president, and there was that misleading report by a Voice of Nigeria. And Yolanda, I see you. You know, please. Here quickly.
Yes, I was very excited when we took this report, very happy, very proud of the Nigerian team for the 10th time. That is so beautiful. I truly hope that there is a reward that is deserving of all the hard work that they have put in. You know, sport is a unifying force, and I hope that this can bring about, you know, some sort of unification in the current unsettlements that have been happening with all these, with all this economic and political turmoil. Charles and I were just so happy earlier on because, you know, we were talking about the queens of Europe and calling these the queens of Africa. So congratulations once again. This is wonderful. Hopefully there's a good reward.
You know, I watched that match. I watched Nigeria go 2 goals behind. I watched them come from 2 goals behind to level up. At that point, I was too sleepy. So, of course, I had to knock it off anyway, under the influence of medication. Then, of course, it was really shocking to see that headline from Voice of Nigeria. So I think, you know, the reporter must have given up thinking it was all over. Forgetting that there is a saying in Nigerian football, it's not over until it's over.
That was a big blunder. Moving on to Abuja Inquirer, 20 years after, Wike revisits sale of FG houses in Abuja. And we also have that story in New Telegraph, if we can pull that up. 20 years after FCTA approves government houses, other sale in Abuja. In Abuja Inquirer, there's another story at the top there, which is important. Boat mishap claims 13 in Niger flood SARS Adamawa communities. I mean, the opposition figures claim that this sale or this review of sales in the past is a political witch hunt. A committee has been set up. This sales refers to 2003 to 2005 monetization program that saw thousands of public houses transferred to public servants on an owner-occupier basis. This new directive says it found serious irregularities and infractions in the handling of the sales. I don't know, what's the sense in this? It occurred under President Olusegun Obasanjo government and was designed to reduce the cost of governance by transferring non-essential government residential properties to civil servants. After vetting, would people be sent packing or what? Doyum, what are you
yeah, Yeah, Barrister Nyesom Wike has been one of the miracles of this administration. Is somebody whose efforts in giving life to the administration of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu efforts are very visible, and then they are glaring. We have had successive FCT ministers who have done very little to improve on the status of the FCT as the nation's capital. Then Nyesom Wike has come boldly, making strides and changing a lot of things. So I think this is also a very good move. There's a tendency for Nigerians to become very complacent. These houses, 20 years ago, and perhaps the terms were flexible enough to enable people to meet up. It's quite unfortunate, and let's hope there's a human face to read for the defaulters, whether there will be some concessions or they will give some considerations, and they may not be asked to leave or evacuate immediately. Some may actually, because of the pressures, there's a tendency again that until some pressures are exerted, things don't always happen. So you will see a lot of people now making up the deficits or the differences and the paying up for those houses. And should that not happen, I think it's also a good move to revoke them. After all, there are a lot of people who are on the streets are still looking for places to, lay their heads and then rest their families. So it's a good move, yeah.
For the verdict of that committee, Daily Sun newspaper this morning, price control triggers crisis in power sector. FG states fight over authority to fix tariff. This comes amidst FG plans to audit Genco's 4 trillion naira debt. And if we go back quickly to the Daily Times, female corps members can wear skirts. Court overrules NYSC. Well, the crisis brewing between the federal government and states over price control in the power sector is definitely not what we want to see. It borders on regulatory oversight, but also the realities of the market for consumers. And this is a big test for the government, I think. As far as the NYSC and the skirts or trousers or pants are concerned, some say this is a win for religious belief and freedoms. At the same time, I was at NYSC too. I'm sure all of us here have been at NYSC. There are activities that you cannot, conduct wearing skirts. You actually need trousers. Charles, you want to comment on these two stories?
I think religion seems to be coloring a lot of our national thought, and it has to be everywhere. I just don't understand. So anyway, if we have to wear skirts when during the NYSC, then I think we should also consider wearing skirts when playing football or tennis.
All right. Okay, let's move on to the international headlines. Daily graphic. Army deploys forces in Baku. There are clashes threatening peace in the region. And we also move on to the Citizen newspaper. Will Kenny bounce back and concern Zondo blast Ramaphosa? Raymond Zondo is the former justice minister complaining about pains he had to endure to swear in corrupt cabinet ministers. Then the Guardian newspaper, the Queens of Europe, England makes history with Euro 2025 victory. Congratulations to them. Yolanda, you were talking about the Queens of Europe and the Queens of Nigeria. So here we have it. Daily Mail now shut migrant protest hotel as demonstrators clash again in Epping. Tourists demand that Labour listen to local concerns and more asylum seekers. This hotel used to house migrants is in excess, and there are others across the country. The debate on immigration has been a lightning rod, we know, in the UK and across Europe, of course. There were similar protests last year, and this may not be the end. Economic hardship is hitting the UK, and immigration has become one of the punching bags blamed for the country's problems. Yolanda.
What stands out to me the most here is the public policy on immigration and how it's affecting everyday life for people. Putting up migrants in hotels is, it's really tough to comment on that because it puts a strain on businesses. It puts a strain on people just wanting to, you know, maybe holiday or travel and stay in certain hotels, but are faced by this, you know, by this multitude of migrants. So it's really difficult because I think this really divides people and the community response has not been positive. I think in countries like Spain as well, a lot of people took to the streets to protest because of the number of tourists and, you know, migrants that were being brought into the country, not tourists, excuse me. But this really just does bring a divide in the country. And also the role of media has to be looked at. What does the media have to say and how does this affect what the government actually does at the end of the day?
It's also the way that it is portrayed in the media. It is portrayed as an invasion. Yeah, there might be that migrant crisis with illegal crossings, but it's also portrayed as if that is the real problem of the UK. Brexit dealt a number on the United Kingdom. We know that affected the economy terribly. And then COVID completely shut the economy down. If you have traveled to the UK about 2 years ago, a lot of people looked completely miserable. You know, that was not a migrant issue.
Yes.
That was just an economy, the COVID, and rest of other decisions that have been taken under the Tories, you know, the Conservatives. I mean, Charles, you're shaking your head.
Somebody or something has to be blamed for the unfortunate circumstances. There has to be a scapegoat. So if the migrants have to be the scapegoats this time around, then definitely why not?
Right, let's see the Financial Times. Brussels assessed 15% tariff to fix unfair trade relations, as says Trump. So most imports from Europe to the US will be slammed with this amount of tariff. There had been transatlantic trade war, so to speak, since President Trump came into office. Negotiations were ongoing. At least now a deal has been reached that seems agreeable. And then finally, to the Times newspaper, stammer to press Trump on Gaza. PM hopes President will urge Netanyahu to increase aid. While we know France has gone ahead to recognize the state of Palestine out of frustration with the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. It's not certain that Trump can persuade Netanyahu on this, but you know, once the weapons are still flowing, I think it's difficult to change the course of things here. But anybody can jump in quickly on these two thoughts. Yeah.
I noted down something earlier in one of the reports we were taking where the WHO was saying that there's famine in Gaza, but Netanyahu says there is no starvation and no such thing. So it's really difficult to, you know, kind of know where you stand. And just as you said, with France having said that, you know, declaring Palestine openly, it leaves the world in such a debate that makes it so difficult to determine which side to take. I think most people have declared their own side, and that's to go, you know, without being spoken outrightly. But this war doesn't look like it's anywhere close to ending. I think the media coverage and the public opinion matters a great deal at this point, and people should continue to voice their concerns and to do the best that they can in whatever way that they can.
Well, ultimately, what most people agree is that what is going on in Gaza cannot continue.
Absolutely.
Something has to be done about it. All right, Doyum Nazenga, Head Northern Operations and Abuja Bureau Chief of the Daily Times. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome.
And many thanks, Dr. Constance, for spearheading today's newspaper review. That's all we have time for here on Daybreak. I'm Charles Eruka. It's goodbye from me.
And I'm Yolanda Robert. Please do keep it here on Arise News. The morning show is next. Goodbye.